Okay, today we are giving the country a national checkup. And our patient? Well, it's not a person. It's the very foundation of New Zealand. We're talking about its roads, its power grids, its hospitals. We're going to dive into a major new draft plan from the Infrastructure Commission that asks some really tough and, frankly, pretty surprising questions about the health of our nation's most essential services.
And this quote right here from the report itself, it just gets straight to the heart of it. It's a real puzzle, you know? New Zealand spends a ton of money on infrastructure, but the results, they just don't seem to stack up. So the big question is, why?
All right, so let's start with the diagnosis. Just like any checkup, this one begins with the numbers, the vital signs. And what the Commission uncovered is, to put it lightly, pretty startling. So get this, for the last 20 years, New Zealand has poured an average of 5.8% of its entire economic output, its GDP, into building and maintaining infrastructure.
To put that in perspective for you, that works out to about $4,500 for every single person in the country every year. That is an exceptionally high amount of money to be spending when you look at other countries like us.
In fact, that level of investment actually puts us in the top 10% of all spenders among developed nations in the OECD. So, by any measure, we are a big spender. No question about it.
Which leads to the really obvious question, right? If we're putting all that cash in, our roads, our hospitals, our power networks, they should be absolutely world-class. So, are they? While the report's answer is a very blunt and pretty shocking no. When it comes to the actual value we get for all that spending, that so-called bang for our buck, New Zealand is somehow in the bottom 10%. We spend like the best, but we're getting results like the worst. So, we've got the diagnosis. We're spending a lot, but not getting much back. Now let's look at the symptoms. What's actually causing this? Why is so much money leading to such poor value? The report points to a few key things. Look, part of it is our geography. We're a small population spread out over a pretty tricky landscape. That's a given. But the report also highlights some major hurdles that, honestly, we've put in our own way.
And one of the biggest hurdles is this absolute maze of regulations that we've created. This is incredible. Across our 68 different local councils, New Zealand has more than 1,100 different land use zones. And just for comparison, a country like Japan, which is famous for its efficiency, has just 13. That level of complexity just creates so much friction in the system.
And that friction, it has a real massive cost. The report figures that we spend $1.3 billion every single year just on the paperwork and process of getting projects consented. That's all money spent before a single shovel even touches the ground.
And this quote just nails another one of our core problems. The report really echoes this sentiment from Kurt Vonnegut. We tend to focus on the big, shiny, new projects, while the boring but absolutely essential work of maintenance gets pushed aside.
So, to fix this, the report is arguing for a pretty radical shift in how we think. It's recommending that a whopping 60% of all our future infrastructure spending shouldn't be on new things at all, but just on renewing and maintaining what we've already got. So we've seen the problems we have right now. But the report also looks to the future, and it sounds a really clear warning. There are some major pressures building up on the horizon that are going to make this whole situation even more difficult. First up is our changing population. I mean, look at this shift. Back in the 1960s, you had 7 working-age people for every 1 retiree. Today, that's down to 4. And by the 2070s, it's projected to be just 2. That means a much, much smaller group of people working and paying the taxes needed to fund all this stuff.
And at the exact same time, we've got climate change to deal with. To hit our net zero targets, we have to electrify massive parts of our economy, our cars, our industries, and that means we're going to need a 60% increase in electricity. That is a huge, monumental task.
Okay, after all that pretty sobering news, we get to the proposed treatment. What's the doctor's prescription to get our infrastructure healthy again? Well, the Commission lays out a really clear 4-part strategy, and it really flows in 4 logical steps. First, you've got to sort out the funding so we know we can actually afford what we plan to build. Then, clear the way. Cut through all that red tape we talked about. The third, and this is crucial, is to have a maintenance-first approach. And only then Once all that's done, should we make smart, right-sized choices about what new things to build?
The bottom line here is that we have to make tough choices. We just can't afford to do everything. And this next part is pretty astonishing. The report found that about half of all the big projects asking for government money don't even have a complete business case. They haven't even proven they're a good idea yet.
And you can see that funding challenge so clearly right here. For smaller projects, things look okay. Most of them are funded. But the story completely flips when you look at those billion-dollar-plus mega projects. A staggering 2/3 of their total cost has no confirmed money set aside. This is where the really hard decisions have to be made.
So, we have the diagnosis and we have the prescription. But this brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of this whole story. Because this massive, detailed plan, it isn't the final word.
See, the Infrastructure Commission has put this out there as a draft for a reason. They're actually asking for a national second opinion. They want feedback from the public, from businesses, from communities, from you. And you've got until early August 2025 to have your...
So there you have it. We've laid out the diagnosis and the doctor's orders. We know we're spending a whole lot for not much in return. And we have a proposed cure. But where we go from here, that's not set in stone. The Commission has essentially handed the country a map. The question that's now open for all of us is, what destination should we choose?